Welcome back to TV Tacoma's 24-hour coverage of Relay for Life. With me, I have two wonderful people. Please join me in welcoming the mother of Relay. Drum roll, please. Miss Pat Flynn. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you out here.
Yes.
Glad to be back.
I'm glad to have you back in this seat, and thank you for taking a break to come in and talk with us. And you brought with you this handsome man over here, Mr. Brian Marlow. You are the co-chair for this year's Relay for Life event.
I am.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Well, Pat, since we've seen you, or since I saw you last year in these seats, tell us what you've been up to.
Well, first of all, relishing in the wonderfulness of celebrating the 25th anniversary. We had a museum that reminded us of all the things that have happened and grown and the good things that have come out of Relay. So we've spent a quiet year celebrating that, and done some teaching of relays in other states. And that's very exciting to watch.
Yes.
And, of course, got my own Flynn family team started again. And
yes, you did.
They're raising money like crazy, and we've set a $25,000 goal. And I think before this weekend is over, we're going to hit it.
I love that. I remember last year when I was walking the track, stopping by the Flynn family and chatting with you briefly, getting in line to get an autograph of Pat. And it was just, it was cold, but boy, was it fun that late night. Brian, how did you get involved with the American Cancer Society and moreover Relay for Life?
It's a strange story, probably not like most, but about 15 years, can you believe, about 15 years ago now, came back to work after my honeymoon. And a gentleman that I worked with was chairing the income development committee for the Pierce unit. We had units back then. And they were starting a new event out in Gig Harbor, Washington, where I grew up. And so he said, could you help us do this? And so it was, I had no idea what I said yes to at the time. I had no idea, that's probably typical. I had no idea what I was getting into. And it was that experience. It was just an amazing experience out there that changed. Some of the people that I met, some of the things I experienced changed my life. And it was this huge positive experience. And in that process, I met Pat Flynn. And later on, that was a big part of me coming to Tacoma, where we lived and where I worked at the time. So
incredible.
Yeah.
Now, you shared with me that this is not your first time to be in a chair capacity with
That's
Relay.
Right.
6 years ago.
The 20th, for the 20th, yeah.
The 20th. That's incredible. And now you're back for the 26th.
Yes.
So let me ask you the question as we kind of time warp between the two. What has changed between that experience and your experience right now?
I wonder if Pat might share this too. And if, I'm sitting next to the mother of Relay. I'm just some guy sitting next to her probably.
Right,
but,
just some guy.
Some guy. But it's amazing to me that you can never imagine how it's going to get bigger and even better. But it just seems to it grows. And the core group of beautiful people, there's this core group of beautiful people that seem to be there every year, the Pat Flynns and the Diane Sweeneys and
yes,
the Walshes. They're always there. They always come. But what's interesting to me is that every year there's new teams, there's new faces, there's new energy. It just keeps getting better. It's amazing to me.
It does, doesn't it though? Pat, what would you add to that?
Well, I want to add the fact that I remember when Brian became active, and Brian had such a passion for this event that pretty soon we were going to national events and hearing this young man from Tacoma, Washington speak about Relay. And I'll tell you, Brian has affected more people over these United States, just inspiring with talks that none of us could replicate. I mean, he's amazing, and he's very shy about that and doesn't talk about it, but I've been there to see it and so proud that he's with us.
Thank you.
That's incredible. Pat, you, as for people who perhaps don't know, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't know, but let's catch them up to speed about you. You were there that first night of Relay when Dr. Klatt was circling the track. You were behind the chain link fence. And as the story goes, you had gone to bed and tossed and turned and couldn't get to sleep and thought, what is this? And then you got up, got dressed, and went back to the track and watched that.
3 times.
Yes, 3 times.
My husband thought I was losing my mind.
Little did he know that you were growing your heart for the American Cancer Society at that moment.
We all figured that out after a few years, but that was such a history-making night when Gordy, for 24 hours, walked and ran those 83 miles.
Yeah.
And I was one of his non-cancer patients, and he had told me about it, and I had pledged money to his event, and something drew me up there. And so that something held on, and when he called me a few months later and asked if I would be on that first small committee, my head said, absolutely not. You have way too many obligations. And my heart said, yes, I'd really like that.
Yes.
So,
we're so glad your heart went out.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Brian, for you, as you've chaired this year and you talked about the event gets bigger and better every single year, it seems like also that the teams become more focused, as we were talking earlier, about what their strengths and what their passions are. And the fun in this stadium is incredible, but also the effectiveness is something that you just can't really experience until you come down here. Do you agree with that?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the momentum building. And also I remember last year where we really focused in on taking care of the caregiver. And I loved that message because, you know, all of us, all 3 of us have been affected by cancer. We know someone who either has it or had it, or we have it in our family, or we ourselves have been fighting it. And when I think about the structure and the support that you need in order to fight cancer, the caregiver is huge. But who takes care of the caregiver, Pat?
well, I hope all of us are taking care of the caregiver.
Absolutely.
Because the caregiver definitely needs that extra support. But the American Cancer Society is there for the caregiver with patient services and all kinds of support that Relay dollars help support. I learned from the CEO of the American Cancer Society just a couple of months ago that Relay contributes 40% of the American Cancer Society's income each year. That's huge because
that's huge.
It's, Relay in the United States raises over $400 million a year. And since it began in 1985, since Gordy Klatt took that first step on the track at UPS, we've raised nearly $4 billion, with a B, dollars for research, patient services, education, and now a lot of advocacy.
That is incredible.
Unbelievable.
I mean, and we were talking about this, Brian, before we got on the air, and that was just in this economy. Boy, it's a tough economy out there. This is a hard time. And I think that fundraising especially has felt the hit because, you know, people are struggling to pay their mortgages and put food on the table, and sometimes those dollars need to be diverted to just basic needs. But we still see Relay continues to hold the flame. Why do you think that is?
Because it touches everybody. I mean, I think everybody has a cancer story. The other thing that's amazing about this event is it's not reliant on corporate sponsorships. It's not reliant on large contributors. We raised almost $400 million last year, probably on average. I don't know the actual average. My guess is between $20 and $40 at a time. And so even though things are tough, even though we put more people on the track last year, there were more teams, there were more participants. There were about 3.5 million participants last year contributed to that $400 million number. And more people showed up, more teams showed up. And, you know, the average gift was a little bit lower than it was the year before. But that passion, you can't stop that passion. Really.
And one of the things I learned out of last year's experience with the economy and I was sharing it with my team members this year, is that we can't be the judge. When we ask for a donation, we can't judge. We may know that our friend is struggling with job or anything in the economy, but we also don't know they may be struggling with something with cancer that is way more important to them. And this may be the one thing they give to this year, but that's their choice to make, and we just need to ask.
Absolutely. Yeah, my grandmother used to always say, asking is for free. So are manners, she'd also say too, but we're talking about asking right now. So asking is for free. Now, Relay has become such the manual for fun, in the sense that I think that if there's any organization around the world that wants to know about how to put the fun into fundraising, look at Relay and these teams out there, and the year-round events that happen. We have the crab feed we talked about with the harnesses. We have the prostate group has a pints in a pub that they do. We have candle parties for men and for women as couples to be there. It gets really ingenious. We have bunko parties. I went to a bunko party, just recently for Relay for Life. It's no longer just the fundraising 101. We have our doctorate now in fundraising, don't we?
We do, and with sharing it with people across the country. It's now in 5,400 communities in the United States.
Oh my goodness.
And 1,000 events worldwide that are outside the United States in 18 countries.
Incredible.
So we have learned how to do that, and for a lot of smaller communities, it's a wonderful way for that whole community to get together. Here in Pierce County, because of Tacoma, we now have 10 relays, and all of them have been born from the Tacoma Relay.
That's incredible.
We used to pride ourselves in the beginning of picking out, seeing that we had several teams from Puyallup. I bet they really would love to have their own relay. And then we had to talk them into it. And we did the same thing with Gig Harbor. And it just is, I am so happy to see our county have 10 relays.
Oh, it's incredible.
Where there are some in the east, in the southeast, Gwinnett County, Georgia, the whole county is together. They raised $2 million at their event.
My goodness.
But they have it at a fairgrounds, and they have to have the police direct traffic, and there are 500 teams, and it's so you kind of get lost in the shuffle. And I love the size of our Pierce County relays.
I do
all
too.
of them. They're just right for us.
They seem to have struck a balance in the sense that the message is still very intimate. It's very palpable when you look at the luminaria. You can feel it in that stadium. I challenge anybody to keep their eyes dry during that time.
Absolutely.
And yet the education that goes on the outskirts of that stadium, of that track, the education gets better and better every year. In the sense of, I look at, for instance, Brian, you being the co-chair of this event, this event must be a full-time job for you, in addition to your full-time job.
My boss might be watching. I have to be careful
Oops, that's right.
how I answer that question.
Well, you just came from work in your suit. I know you have your relay clothes, back in the car.
Yeah.
But this is a full-time job in the sense of vendors, education, securing, even the great music that goes on, that I know that people are always saying, how do I get the relay music? And I've said to this man, you need to have Relay for Life CDs and sell them. Because the music is so good that keeps us going. But those are the kind of...
Good idea.
Yeah. I just wrote down another fundraising.
Well, hey, you know what? Whatever it takes. But it's those details that you're in charge of.
You'd be amazed at how many people, 30 people are on our committee this year. And normally between, that's 20 to 40 people. It's unbelievable. We'll walk around the track a little bit later tonight and into the next day. we'll walk around the track and tap people on the shoulder and say, you know, we've seen you at all the meetings.
Yes.
You know, you've been a part of a successful team. Why don't you help out on the committee? You'd be amazed at how many people and the talent and the abilities that these people bring to the table. Actually makes my job very, very easy in this.
It does. It does.
And I didn't just say that for my boss in case he is
good.
watching. But,
Good. He is watching.
Yeah.
Before we say goodbye, any final comments until we get to talk with you next year, Miss Pat?
Well, I would just invite anybody who's near Mount Tacoma High School this evening or in the morning to come by and see what's happening. It's very gratifying to me to see those survivors surviving.
Oh, yes.
It's a real inspiration to me, and it tells me I will keep walking till we find a cure.
Absolutely, yes. Well, thank you. Thank you, Pat, for being the mother of Relay and continuing to have huge arms that embrace us and keep us comforted as we fight this fight, as all great mothers do. And Brian, for you to co-chair this event amidst your very busy career you have in your family, speaks so highly. So thank you, Brian, so much for your time and for your heart for this event.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.